Hello, thanks for joining me. This is the second part of a tour around Cilrhedyn Churchyard. Now there are quite a few volunteers working to clear the brambles. If you're watching, you're absolutely marvellous people, thank you so much. Now more headstones are coming to light. This tiny headstone is very worn now, but it reads Sarah Lewis, died November the 5th, 1789, aged 1 year. There is a roughly carved heart at the bottom of the inscription, so poignant. Close by is the stone commemorating Mary Lewis of Newcastle, that's Newcastle Emlyn, the nearby town, and her husband Lewis Lewis. They died in 1826, aged 61, and 1850, aged 70, and may well be little Sarah's parents. Perhaps that explains why they are buried here despite living some 6 or so miles away in another parish. They could have lived here when Sarah died. Also buried with them, William Rowlands, their grandson, who died in 1826, the same year as his grandmother. He was only 9 months old. Close by are 2 brothers, sons of Samuel Jones, who kept the White Hart Inn in Newcastle Emlyn. John died in 1839, aged 2 months, and David died a year later, aged 4 years. I don't know why these children were buried so far from home, nor is there a stone to their father here. Their mother is not mentioned on the headstone, which is not unusual practice for the early 19th century. However, next to their stone is this one to Samuel Jones of Penrath, who died in 1824, aged 53. Perhaps he was their grandfather, and they were brought to rest close to him. This part of the south side of the churchyard has most of the earliest gravestones. They are similar in shape with rounded tops, shorter and narrower than the ones from the middle of the 19th century. Here is one leaning on top of another. The stone at the back is to Samuel Thomas of Cilrhedyn Churchyard, a cottage that no longer exists. It is named after a crop which once was grown extensively round here, pilcorn, a type of oat. Samuel Thomas died in 1803, aged 45, and his wife Eleanor died the following year, aged 39. The stone which leans against theirs is to their children, Evan and Mary. Evan died aged 5 months in 1786, and Mary died 11 years later in 1797, aged only 2 years. This stone is not as badly weathered as some, and the ruled lines made by the mason to ensure he got the lettering even and straight can still be seen. It is to Anne Evans, the wife of Michael Evans, a smith. She died in 1814, aged 42. It's not easy to find anything much out about the people who lived before the census of 1841, and the headstones give little away. This headstone, however, tells us a lot about the couple it commemorated. It says, "In memory of Mary Ann Walters, the beloved wife of Mr. Jonathan Walters, who has been for many years huntsman at Bronwydd. Mary Ann Walters departed this life on the 8th day of March 1866 in the 59th year of her age. She had lived in the service of Mrs. Lloyd of Cilrhedyn for 35 years. Her strict integrity and active usefulness had gained her the respect of all who knew her, while her simple and affectionate nature had endeared her to each member of the family, and especially to her mistress, who mourns her loss as that of a faithful friend. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much." Luke 16:10. Also to the memory of Jonathan Walters, husband of Mary Ann Walters, who died on the 21st of January 1875, aged 63 years. For 46 years he had been a faithful and honest servant at Bronwydd as huntsman, and was highly respected by each member of the family. The Walters were born here, but became servants to the Lloyd family for decades. In the 1841 census they were both at Bronwydd in Llangynllw. In 1851 Jonathan was a groom at Bronwydd. while his wife lived miles away at Cilrhedyn and was a housemaid to Mrs. Anne Davis Lloyd near Boncath. In 1861, Jonathan was serving Thomas Lloyd of Bronwydd as a gamekeeper and was huntsman at Bronwydd in 1871. Their daughters seem to have been farmed out to stay with people in the area. It was not easy being a married servant couple, and children were not considered an advantage by the servants' employers. Two of their children, Sarah and Anna, are buried next to their parents. Sarah died in 1852, aged 17, and Anna died in 1860, aged only 15. Mary Ann, named after her mother, followed in her parents' footsteps and went into service. She was a servant at Mount Gurnos, a neighbouring gentry house to Bronwydd, in the 1861 census, and a decade later was at Penrath mansion near Aberkeith, serving the Saunders Davis family. Margaret, her sister, left Wales and went into service with the Cumming family of Tullows Lodge, Cheltenham, Gloucestershire. She was there in the 1870s and 1880s. She returned to Wales in the 1890s and in the 1901 census was living alone at Penbryn near Cardigan. Next to them are buried the Watter family, whose unusual name later became Walters, and they may have been related to the Walters we've just met. They lived at Pontwedust, between Cumkeith and Capel Ewan. William and Sarah had 10 children. The eldest son, Samuel, died in 1841, aged 25. William, Sarah's husband, died in 1845, aged 58. Sarah continued to live at Pontwedust after his death. She was a baker, and her sons James and William were masons, as their father may have been. The second daughter, Anne, was a nurse. Sarah was living with 6 children and 3 grandchildren, the eldest daughter, Mary, dying in 1857, aged 36. In 1861, Sarah was farming a miserable 3 acres and living with her son Joseph, a mason, and 3 grandchildren, and a decade later, aged 75, she was still farming and still living with Joseph, who by then had a wife, Rachel, and 2 children, William and Sarah. Whilst her son James, his wife and children, was a mason elsewhere in Cilrhedyn. She died in 1876, aged 83, and Joseph continued to live at Pontwedust with Rachel, his wife, and William and Sarah, his children. Joseph was a master mason by then, and William followed his father into the trade. They are not buried here, but at Rehoboth Baptist Chapel, near Capel Ewan, with their infant daughter Mary. The Davis family lived at Troederrhew in Cumkeith. John Davis died in 1930, aged 89, and his wife Anna in 1910, aged 62. Her mother, Anna Lewis, is also buried here. She died in 1878, aged 59. John Davis was a master carpenter. In the 1890s, he made coffins for the workhouse and parish poor, and also for many others who were buried here. William Williams was also a carpenter, but only for a while. He was born at Bangor Teifi near Llandyssil, but spent most of his life in Cilrhedyn. He became the miller at Cumkeith Mill, where he lived with his wife Elizabeth and had 3 daughters and a son. He died in 1879, aged 72. After his death, the mill went to Griffith Williams, no relation, and William's widow went to live at Cadivor Lodge with her daughter Mary Davis and her husband Evan, a master carpenter. I don't know where she was buried. The many streams in the parish powered a number of mills. Cum Morgan Mill was one of them. In the 1840s, William Thomas was the miller there. In 1845, he lost his son John, who was only 3 years old. Lastly, another long-lived couple, David and Eleanor Phillips of Penrath Farm. If you've seen my other video about the churchyard, you will know that there are several long-lived couples here. Eleanor died in 1830, aged 93, and her husband in 1834, aged 96. They were tenant farmers and not wealthy. David made his will a few weeks before his death. It was signed with a cross because he couldn't write his name. When the will was proved, it showed his total worth at less than £50. He left his lease on the farm and his goods and chattels to his grandson, and to his daughters £1 each annually for the term of the lease. What remained of his money paid for his funeral and this headstone. I hope you found the stories of the cottagers, farmers, servants, carpenters and millers interesting. As we continue to work on uncovering the memorials, more stories will no doubt emerge. Please remember to hit the like button. It helps the YouTube algorithm push the video up so that more people can see it. And if you want to know when more videos come out, please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. And as always, thank you for watching.